So in this week, we're going to cover off several different topics. One of them will be deep research from OpenAI makes its way to all paying customers.
And Sam Altman was right. GPT 4.5 is here.
And not to be outdone, Anthropic has dropped Claude 3.7 Sonnet and also Claude Code.
In the meantime, Snowflake has actually integrated Azure OpenAI models to be used directly into their Cortex AI agent platform.
Two things from Microsoft as well is the Microsoft 5.4 models are released, or at least two additional ones. And also covering off for Microsoft is Fabric's AI skills. We'll cover all that, plus a whole lot more in this week's episode of the AI Files.
Stay tuned. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. As a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Shadab.
Okay, so let's get into the main episode. Let's start with the AI quote of the week. And this week, we have none other than Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, actually co-founder. Incidentally, this year is actually the 50th anniversary of Microsoft. And that would be, I think, in April. We'll be celebrating that soon as well. But in the meantime, let's talk about what he referred to just last week. And the quote of the week, I would say, on AI is Bill Gates' statement where he said, quote, there is, about 4 or 5 things that are very scary. And the only one that I really understood and worried about a lot when I was young was nuclear war. Today, I think we would add climate change, bioterrorism, and keeping control of AI in some form, unquote. Bill Gates said that in an interview with Patrick Collison. Now, Bill Gates argued that society is suffering from a dearth of intelligence, and he believes that AI could present a solution rather than a problem. So he's actually very optimistic about the potential benefits of AI. Um, but he also says that, you need to be careful about it because it can go wrong, right? To paraphrase him. And he says, quote, we don't have as many medical experts, for example, people who can stay on top of everything, or people who can do math tutoring in the inner city. And we have a shortage of intelligence. And so we use this market system to kind of allocate it. AI over time, and people can argue about the time frames, will make intelligence essentially free, unquote. So that's the additional statement that Bill Gates made. Essentially, I think what he's talking about is really that, the future is bright. And particularly when it comes to AI, there's so much goodness that will come out of it. But you also need to be careful, right? There's, him being scared about this could be dangerous as well is very true. Because he's putting that in the category of same as climate change, bioterrorism, pandemic, as well as AI in the same bucket. So, it's like, yes, there is a lot of goodness, but there is a lot of danger could also happen with the AI. So, I think nothing new, but Bill Gates just reminding us this week.
Yeah, and I think it's just like anything else, it's keeping things in check, ensuring that there's good in certain things. Obviously, AI has the potential to be a game changer, not only for industry, but humans in our lives. So, there's something to be said about understanding the power of a capability, but also keeping those things in check and not letting your fears also get the best of you to not embark on using those capabilities, technologies, whatever they are. But again, I just take that back to just understanding what is the potential and ensuring that we do have some things that can safeguard and protect human society. Anyway, outside of that, as I mentioned, OpenAI made deep research available to all paying customers this past week. So if you remember, unless you were on the $200 a month plan when deep research became available, not too long ago, we're only talking less than 2 months ago, that this capability came in. And just to remind everybody what deep research is, it's not the quote unquote search capability inside of ChatGPT. This is a in-depth, basically think of it as a scholar in your pocket to actually do research across multiple sources of information, synthesize, analyze, and then be able to report back. That's what deep research is. So it's more than just the simple using GPT 4.0. So the use cases, again, finance, science, law, different things where you need a lot of analysis / research to complete your task. And again, it creates this detailed document set of reports with its clear citation. So the important thing is that this is now available to all paying customers, as I mentioned. There are some limits, though. As I mentioned before, the pro users were able to get this first. They can do 120 deep research queries per month. The limit sets every 30 days. For plus teams, enterprise, and educational users, you could do 10 queries per month. That's not a lot. So you certainly want to use this functionality sparingly when you need to do some research. So again, if you're just doing simple things or just wanting to do a quick search and have some information come back, just use the search feature inside of ChatGPT. But when you want to do this in-depth analysis, that's what you should be using. So when you think about, how do I actually use this? So when you start up ChatGPT, this is a little part that I think is a little confusing. You're going to see it's going to revert to GPT 4.0. There's actually some parts of this that use the intelligence of the reasoning models behind the scenes. So that's why it's so expensive and why there's limits on this. But there's a new button that now shows up for everybody on the paid plans that says deep search. So different than search. So again, you're going to have two things side by side. As soon as you click on this, it's going to take you into that deep research capability. Now, let me just show you what this looks like because I have, as I mentioned before, I'm on the paid plan and I could show you this in real life. Now, given that I only have the ability to do 10 of these per month, I'm not going to do this while we're on the air, simply because I don't want to take away my 10 per month. But more importantly, this deep research takes a lot of time, anywhere between 5 minutes to potentially, a half hour, based on what you're actually asking it. So as I said before, you see this where it says deep research. I click on that. So basically, after I do my prompt, it's going to start this deep research. Now, what does that actually mean? So when I'm doing research or want to do some deep research, what should a good quote unquote person who's doing the research do? Well, they should ask you some follow-up questions on what you're really trying to research about. So I'm going to show you one that I did. And as I do a lot of my examples, I did one based upon weather. So here was my initial prompt: create a technical paper on the latest thinking on how supercells create tornadoes, include any information on nudging storms, impact on tornado genesis. So I could get into the details. I know what the answers are in this because this is what I do for fun when I'm not doing these recordings. But you'll notice what the deep research came back with. It asked, do you want recent case studies, modeling techniques? So it's actually asking me for some clarification. And I provided it with, in this case, some simple clarification. Now, I will say this: the more you put into your prompt and the more insights that you provide to it, the better that it's going to be in terms of what comes back. Now, I could have gotten a lot more in depth with these, with the prompts, but I just wanted to see what this thing could do. So if you notice here, and here's a couple of things that were improved, by the way. When I do the deep research, I could provide to deep research now data or files. That's something that could not be done outside of this update that just came out. The other thing too is I could see a full set of the information that has been researched. So you notice here, when I ran this, it's actually like a progress bar. It shows you what it's currently doing and how it's thinking, but I could go back and look at all of that information. So the activity, these were each of its steps. So when I said that there's a reasoning model, you could see that it says, oh, okay, I'm piecing together the request and technical paper on the formation. I'm gathering my sources. Then it tells you what it's actually reading, all those different sources. So it's going step by step, and it's going through its thought process. The other thing is I could jump to the different sources so I could see in one full list where it got its information from. And, it pulled it from Penn State University. It pulled it from Science Council at the NOAA. It pulled it from news from Wisconsin Education. And I could go on and look at all these things. And then the end result is literally it's deep research. And again, this in this case took 7 minutes to go through all of its analysis and gives me a real insightful, in-depth analysis and research based upon, in this case, tornado genesis, which I read through this whole thing and it was spot on. A couple of little sidebar notes. There are different tools for deep research. Google has one. There's obviously this one from OpenAI. There's other deep research from some other tools that are out there. What I could say is this: there's less hallucinations that I've seen through the OpenAI, and I kind of attribute that to the amount of in-depth analysis that it's doing. I'll give an example. The deep research that Perplexity provides, it's not as in-depth, and there's a lot to be desired in terms of the hallucinations and the things it literally just makes up, as compared to what the OpenAI deep research is. So anyway, just pointing that out. It's out there for all paid users. You can now go and use it. Again, remember, do it sparingly. You're only allowed 10 per month. And that kind of goes, again, it's attributed back to the amount of compute power that's really needed to run these things.
Yeah, it's pretty good, Jamie. In fact, I also played with it. I gave it a prompt saying that, okay, Meta actually just published about the ARIA Gen 2 glasses. These are AR glasses. And I asked it to actually create a research on it, right? A excellent summary with the deep research. And it asked me multiple questions. It asked me that, okay, what aspects you want to, you are more interested in, like the hardware specs or software or release date pricing, things like that. So it does look like that it's reasoning, right? It's thinking about what are relevant dimensions in which you want to actually deep dive. And then it actually went forward. It took about 7 minutes. It looked into 29 resources. And it is important because there is not a lot of information out there. It's not easily available. So what I found is that it actually went to I analyzed those sources, and I found that it actually did a kind of a deep search first before it did the deep research, because I could not possibly have discovered all those sources. So it's a really very powerful tool, definitely. And at our own podcast also, we will use it for some of the topics actually, and that's how we create some of these summaries and reports, and that's how we prepare for these episodes as well. So it's a very powerful tool for anybody who wants to dig deeper, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So I think in the other news, Jamie, there is always some fun, and it's like a gossip topic, right? The deep seek. We can't forget about it. I just want to make sure that we don't forget. There are some rumor mills already working, and then there is a lot of news about the DeepSeek R2 model coming in, and it's a shipping frenzy, right? I mean, we already saw that there was a R1, and it's been just like barely 2 months in the year, and we already know that Google released things, and then OpenAI released the O3, and the DeepSeek did that R1, and before that, and then the Claude actually did also release, which you will talk about soon. And then OpenAI is already at it, right, with their 4.5, which we'll talk about. But in the meantime, DeepSeek is also not falling behind. They are also actually working on it. There are news that they may be coming up with the R2 very soon. So they probably May was the initial anticipation when they will launch it, but it may be even sooner. And I'm just thinking, like, the shipping frenzy continues, to be honest, right? And they seem to be getting into the same race. So let's see when that comes out and what new benchmarks will it break? But it is definitely putting a lot of pressure on the other company like OpenAI, Anthropic, and everybody else.
Yeah, I will definitely, second that notion. It's certainly putting pressure on other companies to maybe potentially put some of their models out sooner than what they had anticipated, or at least were planning to do. That could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. I don't know. When you look at some of these models, I think some of them might have been a little bit rushed to get out the door, but that's another topic for a different day. But yeah, I eagerly are waiting to see what DeepSeek puts out next with their next reasoning model. So
Yeah.
I was going to say, I know that we had, there's a lot that occurred over the last week as far as new models, new launches. You kind of teased us a little bit with the new model coming out from OpenAI. Do you want to educate our listeners on what came out from OpenAI this week?
Yeah, you already set it up, Jamie. So, in our launch section this week, we will start with OpenAI's launch of GPT 4.5. Now, Sam Altman had already given us indication about 2 weeks back when he tweeted that this is how we will go about. We will have GPT 4.5, which will come, which will be like last of the non-chain of thought reasoning model, and then then eventually we will get to GPT 5, where things will converge, right? So it is on the anticipated path. I would say it is sooner than what I thought it would be. It dropped in actually this week. It could be just to take some shine off the Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which is what OpenAI is master of, right? Like shipping it at the right moment, just to take the the thunder away from the other competition, which is what they did. However, GPT 4.5, I think it's like a little bit of a head scratcher. People are still trying to figure out like what is such a leap from GPT 4.0 to 4.5. Now, what OpenAI is claiming is the leap is really in the emotional intelligence, right? The EQ part of it, like the way, the feel, the natural feel to the conversation that you have. And you can see those examples like what you're showing on the screen right now. You can see those examples of that. It's more human, it's more natural conversation rather than like more formal kind of thing. The other thing is that it also actually has like more, it has scaled up more pre-training and post-training. So it has better world knowledge, it has reduced hallucinations. So overall, the quality and the feel are the main winners of this model.
Yeah, and the way that Sam Altman put it in one of his tweets, it's about EQ, or emotional intelligence, and obviously part of that is the way that they did their training, which improved the quality of the responses. And if you go to the OpenAI site and where they announced the GPT 4.5, which we'll have in the show notes, by the way, you could see some of the examples, and we're showing one of them on the screen. A difference between the way that 4.5 will respond as far as an output versus 4.0. And they go through three very different examples. This one, that we're showing here is, if a person's going through a tough time, how the model responds. I kind of call it one being very clinical, or like, hey, did you follow these steps? To another one being more empathetic, on like, if I was actually talking to another human, how would that human respond, assuming that human had emotional intelligence. There's definitely some humans that don't, but that's really where the big improvement is. I will say, I don't know if I'm going to be confrontational with this statement, or maybe out there. This is my personal belief. The amount of difference that this model is providing, I don't think is worth the cost. So we haven't talked about cost yet for this. So if costs were the same between GPT 4.0 and this 4.5 model, I'd be like, all right, cool. I could deal with a better emotional intelligence and reduced hallucinations. But once we tell you what the price is, I don't know if you're going to agree with having a emotional intelligence piece. So, do you want to drop the bad news or pricing news? Sorry, I don't want to
Yeah,
leave
let's talk about the pricing, right? This is where the things will become a little bit disappointing, because the price is like such a huge leap. It is $75 per million input tokens, and $150 per million output tokens. And compare that to GPT 4.0, which is just $2.5 per million input token and $10 per million output token. To put that in perspective, it's about 30 times more expensive for the inputs and about 15 times more expensive in the output. Now
Yeah,
let's talk about.
we're not talking like, oh, this is 10% more. Like, this is a 30-fold increase, and it's a little bit of a head scratcher on my point of view. When you have other competitors driving costs down, and you look at this price increase, yes, I understand, at least from what Sam Altman put out there, in the sense that this is a bigger model, takes more to train, more power to run the inference. Does it really cost that much more? It just seems like it's way out of line from where we've been heading over the last year, with costs going down. And when we see companies like DeepSeek, in terms of the cost for what they're putting out there, to me, this is, hopefully this is just an introductory price, and this comes way down, because I don't see many corporations taking up this model just because of the large increase for maybe just something that's has emotional intelligence on it. So anyway, that's
Yeah,
my point.
like something is I feel something is missing, right? Either the people like us and the users and the enterprises are still going to need more time to truly discover its potential, which justifies its increased cost, or OpenAI has grossly miscalculated its value. Something is missing, right? The thing is that OpenAI, however, has a brilliant track record when it comes to the commercial value, right? The business value of the models. If you see, their models from GPT 3.5 to 4.0 was a leap forward. And ever since, they have been constantly actually decreasing the prices. In fact, so much so that in the last 2 years, it was almost like more than 90-95% decrease in the overall prices. Now, with the O1 family, but it's a different family of models, the price did increase, but it was only for O1. It was not for the GPT 4.0 versions. So, and reasoning models, we know, right? I mean, it takes longer, etc. They are expensive, as well as they generate a lot of tokens, so it makes sense. What we all are scratching head is that, okay, why is it so expensive when the value, when the difference is not highly perceptible, right? I think that's what the head is scratching. The other thing is, Jamie, what I feel is that maybe it is setting the ground for the GPT-5, right? Setting the, maybe because this model is, like in the it's still like a research model, I would say, right? I mean, it's not like production ready, it's not advised to be production ready. Maybe it is just setting the ground and or testing the water for the GPT-5 pricing, probably.
Right. And to that notion, I mean, Sam already mentioned that GPT-5 is going to be out before July. I think it might have even been, let's say, May, June timeframe. So yeah, like you said, maybe this is testing the waters, maybe this is trying to find where the footing is. That being said, the 5.0 model is supposed to be the combination of both the transformers and the reasoning models. So to me, that means more horsepower, and in my head, that means higher pricing. So maybe this is the first iteration of testing the waters on how high OpenAI can push the boundary on what the cost is going to be. I don't know. Hopefully, I'm wrong. Hopefully, this is just a blip, and pricing will come down again, or maybe we're all get used to this is the price and that's what it's going to be.
That's true. I think whatever it is, it's a bold move, not from in terms of the like launching. The pricing wise, it's just such a bold move. I think Sam is definitely teasing it, testing it, and checking it out, because it just doesn't get. I, I don't know. I mean, it's like just too early probably to say it, but right now, it just people are still trying to figure out why so
Yeah.
expensive.
That's
Okay.
for sure. So speaking about new models, OpenAI is not the only company that released new models over the past week. So Anthropic, not to be outdone, put out Claude 3.7 Sonnet and also a new tool called Claude Code. So, you know, I go back and forth around the way that models are named. When you think back to Claude, um, they didn't they didn't have a 3.6. So, they went from 3.5 and then called it 3.5 new, which was so confusing because it's new. What is new? What it was not. Anyway, they took away that new nomenclature and called it 3.7. It might be because the reason is this new model is the first model, at least from any company that I can think of, that actually combines the transformer with hybrid reasoning. So this is the first one that's state of art for combining those two, and it really focuses on coding skills, which has been the predominant capability of the Claude models itself. So again, high praise for the capabilities around what it's able to do in coding skills. What's also interesting is that this new model not only is focused on coding skills, but is also aligned with the computer use. And if you remember, this is the capability of the Anthropic to actually integrate with Claude Code capabilities to actually operate your computer, and at least in a research node. The other thing too is that this keeps with Anthropic's higher context windows, not as high as Gemini models, but it does have a 200,000 context window inside Sonnet. And the availability of this new model, again, if you remember with Claude, they have 3 different tiers: Opus, Sonnet, Haiku. This is the middle one. Will we see a 3.7 Opus or Haiku in the future? Probably. But again, this is the middle tier Sonnet model, which is available on Anthropic's API. It's available on Amazon Bedrock. It's available on Google's Vertex AI. And, it's available for users that might be using the web or iOS or Android. So as I mentioned before, it excels at coding. It's great at agentic coding, handling different tasks that is typical within the development lifecycle. I could say this, that it is by far, I've used it and I know some of my peers have as well. It is the best model for coding or coding practices. What's also interesting with this new capability is you can set the intensity level, basically to fine tune Claude's performance for whatever coding task that you're actually doing. So this will balance the speed and depth of analysis. And again, I go back to the fact that this is a hybrid reasoning model. So if you put it at its higher reasoning, it's going to take longer, but it also takes more tokens for it to generate. And, the more tokens, the more costly. So you now have a little bit of this control. I kind of call it the performance slider as a developer through the API that you could use. Some other capabilities, this is really good for using chatbots that might need advanced reasoning and or that human-like interaction. And it's also really good at data visualization because it can extract information from visuals like charts and graphs, which would be useful for data analytics. Now, all that being aside, we talked about pricing, by the way, with OpenAI and the GPT 4.5. So this is definitely cheaper than the 4.5, but it still is pretty costly in comparison. So input tokens, $3 per million input tokens. Output tokens is $15 per million output tokens. So this does, there are capabilities for saving costs with prompt caching, which saves up to 90%. Then there's also the ability to do batch, and that will save even more, 50% cost reduction there. But this is still a relatively expensive model based upon 3 and 15 for input and output. Now, the one thing that I will say is something that is new with this. By the way, you can see the benchmarks here. Looking at the O1 reasoning model, O3 mini reasoning, DeepSeek. As I said before, they're this has reasoning capabilities in it, and there are areas where this comes either very close or maybe takes the lead for some of the reasoning. You can see some of this, it actually does better than the O1 model. It's a slightly less than the O3 mini model that's out there. So it does fairly well on the benchmarks. One little side note, you notice that we didn't talk about benchmarks with the GPT 4.5. It wasn't their focus. Their focus was really, as we mentioned, the emotional quality or the EQ pieces. But the 3.7 Sonnet from Anthropic, they're still focusing in on evaluation scores as it compares to other models. Now, what's interesting here is the Claude Code. This is an actual terminal application that you can interact with your code. So it's basically an agent where I can ask Claude Code to say, please review my code structure and provide insights and updates on the code. So this is a very unique proposition. It's basically an agent that you could run and build and test and analyze all your code with. And this is different than the capabilities built in with the Claude chat environment, where you can run your code directly within their pages. This is a separate agent, and this is still in preview. It's sort of like this beta environment. And in order to use this, as I mentioned already, you literally have to actually do an npm install. For those that are not familiar with that, that's a node a node environment. So you're actually installing and creating this application that you're going to work with locally in your own environment. So there's a whole bunch of syntax and all the fun stuff that you can think of. What is really nice that Anthropic has done is they've actually put out code tutorials or how to use Claude Code, as well as different snippets on ways of actually controlling it through this command line interface. And again, this is not a graphical environment. It literally is a terminal window that you interact with and issue commands like, run a query against my environment. How do I think about configuring the overall configuration of my application? Be able to review my application itself. So there's several different configuration, but then there's different tools as well that are available in Claude Code. We'll have all the information in the show notes. We could almost do a whole show just on using and setting up Claude Code, and then using it against your actual programming language that you're using or built with. So anyway, that is the Claude Sonnet 3.7 and Claude Code.
Okay, great. So let's talk about the another launch, Jamie, very quickly. This is from Meta, and this is not a AI model. This is not a llama that I'm talking about. This is now in the category of wearables. So they actually launched ARIA Gen 2 glasses, which is an advanced iteration of their augmented reality wearable technology. Now, what does this glass or this family of glass really do is it has lots of sensory features. So it has, for example, it has like barometer, it has magnetometer, it has heart tracker through the bridge on the nose, it has camera, it has eye tracking, it has all the microphone and the audio, which actually conducts through the bones. So really, really very, very advanced features and the hardware, right? But this is not really meant for the consumer. It is like unlike those Ray-Ban Meta glasses, which are really more on the like social media presence and more targeted towards the consumer. And unlike the Orion glasses, which are like highly immersive AR capabilities for the gamers and other applications, this one is actually more for the research. So this is not available for the consumer. This is actually because you can use these glasses to do some on-device calculations, simulations, things like that. So it is more suited for research review, like robotic applications and other capability that you want to test. So it's really more targeted for the research and researchers. It's not for us to just buy it. So we don't even know about the price and the availability. It's available for the waitlisting. Those who are interested in it, they have to apply for it and things like that. But like it's going to help do more innovations. Essentially, that's what this glass is actually meant for. So and it does, one of the things is that it does a lot of on device things. So it has kind of a, you can say, like it's kind of an edge computing device, because it has some chip capabilities, etc., that you can actually use as an edge computing device as well. So we'll see what else the companies and the others can do with these glasses, but this is more of a research project.
Like I said, I'll be first in line to go grab one of those. Still on the fence of getting the version 1, but maybe I'll wait for this next one.
Me too.
So moving ahead, Microsoft this week, we haven't really talked too much about data products. Microsoft has a product called Microsoft Fabric, which is a software as a service for all things data, not only storing information in a lake house or a data warehouse, but also tools for doing real-time intelligence as well as reporting through Power BI, which a lot of people are familiar with. One of the things that Microsoft is doing through Fabric is integrating artificial intelligence. They have things like Copilot, which is an AI assistant, but they've introduced a new functionality called AI skills. If anyone has tried to do natural language processing or ask questions in English against a database, you know that that's sort of like the holy grail of being able to retrieve your information back without having to issue transact SQL commands or write KQL or how to write DAX, which is for Power BI. By the way, KQL is for real-time intelligence or Custo databases. These are all capabilities that are embedded within Fabric. So Fabric, again, is that one-stop shop for data. But if you want to be able to ask questions, again, in English, well, that's what an AI skill is for. So it's really for the ability for an organization to go against the data context that is within Fabric and create conversational agents that can retrieve that information that is within those data stores. Again, lake houses, the Custo databases for real-time intelligence, and Power BI, or otherwise known as, it's really the semantic models that are behind that. So what's new in this feature release around AI skills is the ability for the person or the user who's developing these AI skills to go against multiple data sources. So why that's important, in its first release, you were only able to go against lake houses, but now you could go against different data sources, up to 5 different data sources within a single AI skill. So it allows for, as I mentioned before, integration between KQL databases and the semantic model. The user experience has also been upgraded, and you can see that from this little snippet that I have on the screen, but it supports more of a conversational aspect. So it's this interaction, being able to have persistent sessions and improved context retention for what was just asked in the previous set of queries. There's also improved reasoning that's behind these skill sets. So it's not a full-blown like reasoning model that's behind this, but it actually does reasoning against multi-step queries, and it will show you those details, meaning that if I ask a question that really needs to pull data from my semantic model in Power BI, a lake house, which is over one lake, which is again, a data store inside of Fabric, which is leveraging data storage techniques over a lake house that's actually leveraging data stores that were initially founded from Databricks. Again, going way off topic, but the thought here is that I could issue these queries, and the AI skill itself will show me how those queries are being issued from those different sources. And last but not least is really a new chat canvas that's being introduced. Now, instead of me just talking about these, let's just do a demo. So I'm going to roll a video that will run through each of these different capabilities that are now within this new AI skill. So let's roll the video.
As an AI creator in Fabric, I want to build a data agent that helps me answer questions on the gaming industry. It also offers insights into my organization's game offerings. So to start, I'll create an AI skill. First, I'll add a semantic model with data on regional and competitive gaming trends. This lets me use the AI skill to ask questions over the semantic model. I'll select tables to scope my AI skill and then start asking questions. Now, I want to understand regional game sales across the industry and identify potential opportunities. The AI skill translates my natural language question into a precise query, providing a breakdown of the units sold by region in my dataset. I can also view the AI's process, including the restated question and the generated DAX query, for greater transparency. Now, let's explore a more complex question. I want to see the top-selling games in each region. The skill returns the top 10 games for North America, Europe, Japan, and the rest of the world, with Wii Sports consistently ranking in the top 5 across regions. Now, additionally, I can also review the AI's process, which I can see that broke down my question into 4 different subqueries, 1 for each region. Next, I want to explore additional trends for my organization's data sources. I'll add a KQL database with real-time data on online ratings and player activity. I'll also add a lakehouse which contains player and account data for games produced by Contoso. Once I've added these additional data sources, I'll go ahead and select the relevant tables for my AI skill. With these multiple data sources, I can also provide additional instructions to better guide the AI on how to use these different data sources. I can use this to also provide guidance on business concepts that are useful for my organization. Now, I can ask questions about multiple data sources with the AI skill selecting the best sources to answer each question. I'll start by asking about the average user rating for Wii Sports and our game Contoso Sports. This query uses my KQL database. Interestingly, the initial response missed Wii Sports due to an error in the KQL query, but no problem. I can provide sample KQL queries to help the AI skill improve. With these examples, the AI skill will look up relevant queries and apply them for future accuracy. When I re-ask the question, I get the updated average user ratings for both Wii Sports and Contoso Sports between September and October 2024. I'm curious about Contoso's lower ratings, so I'll dive deeper to analyze potential factors. I'll begin by examining top players with declining usage. My KQL database includes real-time data on gameplay hours, and the AI skill can translate my question into the appropriate KQL query, returning the players with decreased activity. To understand why these players' usage decreased, I'll need access to data in my lakehouse. With the AI skill's conversational capabilities, I don't need to re-enter individual customer IDs. It automatically picks up this context from my previous answers and applies it as a filter to my lakehouse table, which includes the churn statuses and account details from each player. Now this is really powerful. In a simple conversational way, I can leverage the AI skill to now explore multiple data sources and conduct deeper analysis effortlessly.
So hopefully you found that super interesting. There were a lot of great things that you just saw through that video. I know that I'm super stoked when I see the capability of being able to pull from, like I said, multiple different databases or different data stores that are within Fabric. And hopefully you saw that as well.
Awesome. I think this is this really unlocks so many things which are generally like a lot of data that gets confined within the databases, and then you have to do a tons of jugglery and plumbing to actually get that data and then get into some sort of a reporting platform and then analyze it. But this really opens the door to actually get into that data. Like, here are the two choices, Jamie, right? That's what generally, conventionally, it has been: bring the data to AI. But in this case, it is really bringing the AI to the data. So I think that's a really fascinating flip. And it really unlocks a lot of things from the data.
Yeah, it totally does. And, it certainly wasn't discussed in that demo video that we just went through. But the real power of these skills, yes, you could use it inside of Fabric, but what this is going to enable is exposing that skill to applications as an API, pulling it into AI Foundry to build agents, pulling it into Copilot Studio to build agents there. So this opens up the door for so much ability to just reason over your data, no matter where it sits inside of Fabric, and build agents off of that. So really cool, really excited. I know I played with it a little bit, and hopefully everybody in the audience will get a chance to do that as well. So I know, we just talked about some things with Microsoft. I know that there's also something with Microsoft and Snowflake. Do you want to go into those details, Shadab?
Yeah, it's Snowflake. So, as everybody knows, Snowflake is a data cloud platform. Started with cloud data warehousing and provides, not just the data warehousing capability. They have actually added a lot of AI capabilities and a bunch of other things as well. Snowflake, of course, competes with Microsoft when it comes to the cloud data warehousing. However, in the last 1 or 2 years, I would say the relationship has really taken a different turn. I see a lot of collaboration. We still compete, but I think there's so much collaboration between Microsoft and Snowflake. And like the Microsoft, within Microsoft Fabric that you talked about, Jamie, there are possibilities of mirroring from Snowflake. Microsoft Fabric also now supports the same format that Snowflake is built on. So there is just so much is happening. And in continuation of that partnership and relationship, now Snowflake has just announced that you can now, like they have a platform, data cloud platform. Within that, they have a Cortex AI, which is their AI development, you can say, studio or environment. And from within that, now you can actually directly integrate with the Azure OpenAI, okay, models. So essentially, you don't need to take the data out of Snowflake to make use of the Azure OpenAI models. What this promises is that within the confines, if you are a Snowflake customer and you don't want to go out of the Snowflake boundaries to make use of the AI models, now you can do that within the Cortex AI and just make the direct calls to the Azure OpenAI. Is now integrated within the Cortex. Now, Cortex AI does provide other models as well. They already have the models from Anthropic, Meta, Mistral, and others. And now this also actually provide the Azure OpenAI. So I think this is a big unlock for the particularly Snowflake heavy customers who wanted to also use the Azure OpenAI models. The other aspect of this news is also that, so not just like using the Azure OpenAI within the Snowflake environment, you can actually do the other way as well. So if you are in M365 Copilot, what you can do is, or if you are a Microsoft Teams user, you can actually now also use Cortex agents through those platforms. So from within the Microsoft 365 Copilot, now you can also integrate with the Cortex agents, which will actually be working on the Snowflake data. So that integration is kind of a bi-directional in a different ways, but that's how it actually integrates. So whether you are a Microsoft customer or you are a Snowflake customer, both ways you can leverage the Snowflake data in this news.
Yeah, and just point out on that last part, that's not expected until later on or in the middle part of this year, maybe June, July, for being able to use the Cortex agents inside of Copilot or Microsoft 365 Copilot and Teams. That also gives a slight nod to multi-agentic agents through M365 Copilot, because if you're able to call a Cortex agent, maybe that's coupled with a Copilot Studio agent as well. So, a lot of new developments will be coming later on this year to the world of M365 Copilot and Copilot Chat.
Well said. All right. So let's move on to something else within the Azure, Jamie. The DeepSeek. We talked about the DeepSeek R1 pricing, DeepSeek R2 anticipation, etc. But there is an update to a DeepSeek R1 models within Azure as well. So Microsoft actually was the first one to provide the DeepSeek R1 model as a serverless endpoint, and you could use that as an API within the Azure AI Foundry, right? So it was the first one to actually move in and provide those models within the Azure confinement, So they are safe to use. So you don't have to go to the DeepSeek website or the APIs to actually use them, because this is open source. Microsoft was able to host them within their environment. Microsoft also provides the DeepSeek models on the custom hardware. So, for example, whether it's AMD MI300X, I think, and some of the other NVIDIA's GPU platform, also you can actually use that. So, as a platform model, as a platform, you can actually leverage that. But then you can also use that as serverless API. Now, so far it was a $0 because it was on a trial basis, and there was a limitation in terms of the context window. It was much lesser. The performance wasn't as good because it was supposed to be just for a trial. But given the demand for still a lot of enterprises trying to use the DeepSeek, now Microsoft has made the pricing available, and the performance is also much, much better now. So it now offers a good price to performance ratio. The throughputs are better. The optimizations have been made to give a better experience. But let's talk about the pricing. So the DeepSeek R1 Global, it is available in two modes. One is a global, another is regional, and it is DeepSeek R1 model we are talking about, not the V I think V2 or V3. So the global is where you actually may have the model compute coming from anywhere in the globe, right? It could be within US, or it could be in Asia or EMEA. On the other hand, you have an option of going with the regional, where you go for a specific data center or region, right? Let's say for US East, for example, or North Central Canada. Regionals in general are more expensive than the global when it comes to the models, and that is the same case here as well. But let's talk about the global, because we can then compare that with what DeepSeek provides as a pricing as well, because that's a global pricing. They don't provide a regional specific pricing. So DeepSeek R1 Global pricing, what Azure is now providing is the, like for 1 million tokens, it is $1.35. Okay. And if you compare that with the DeepSeek pricing, it is actually 10 times more, honestly, because that is just about 135 cents. Actually, sorry, 0.0135 per million when you use that during the off-peak hours. So one of the thing about the DeepSeek pricing is that they provide in two different ways. One is the off-peak pricing, another is the peak pricing. So off-peak is anywhere after 4:30 UTC time, PM. Okay, up to I believe midnight, or somewhere about just 30 minutes past midnight UTC time, right? And they also have a pricing which is the off-peak pricing as well as the peak pricing. So let's compare, because the Azure pricing is not based on the timing. Okay, so this is like about 10 times more expensive when it compares to the off-peak pricing, and it's about, I would say, a little more than 2 times when it compares to the peak pricing. So the difference is much lesser when it comes to the peak pricing from the DeepSeek. Similarly, the output pricing is about $5.4 per million, compared to about 55 cents per million token for the output in the DeepSeek during the off-peak. And it's about 2.19 cents, $2.19 per million during the peak hour. So just as a summary, too many numbers here. The summary is that Azure actually provides it. It's not as cost effective as a DeepSeek provided, but remember, it's in Azure boundary. So you get Azure confinement, Azure security, everything is controlled by Microsoft. You don't have to worry about your data if you do not have approval, because a lot of enterprises and countries have not authorized use of DeepSeek just because of the geopolitical tensions.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part. It is the 10 times greater cost worth the security and the responsible AI that Microsoft wraps around this model? In my opinion, if you're going to use DeepSeek, that is the way to go, because you don't want to rely on what China may or may not be doing with your data. So DeepSeek inside of Azure leverages all the safeguards and all the different things that Microsoft does around these models as a service, just like OpenAI just like Meta, just like Mistral, all those different models. So is it worth it? My opinion, yeah. So if you're going to use DeepSeek, this is probably the way to go. It still is a very cheap model in terms of reasoning as you compare it to the other models that are out there.
Yeah. Okay. What else?
Yeah. So taking us to the last kind of quick updates here. So Microsoft, again, we had a lot of news from Microsoft this week, but they introduced a new wave of the 5.4 models, specifically two new models. One being the 5.4 Mini Instruct, which is a 3.8 billion parameter model, and the 5.4 multimodal 5.6 billion parameter. And this builds upon the previously released 14 billion parameter 5.4 model that was just released not too long ago, which again had reasoning capabilities into it. And this could be found on different platforms, whether or not it's the Foundry model catalog from Microsoft, Hugging Face, the GitHub models, as well as Alama. So what's really interesting about this, the 5 models, or at least the key features in this, is it supports multilingual. It's got reasoning. It's got the capability around mathematics. But what's even more important is it supports function calling, which was something that wasn't possible within the previous iterations of the 5 models. So that allows for integration with search engines and other tools. And it is fully multimodal, supporting vision, audio, text, and multilingual understanding. So that's enabling it to generate code from images and integrating different audio functions into the model. So this could be deployed on various different edge deployments. So it could be deployed on edge devices using Microsoft Olive, as well as the Onyx Gen AI runtime platform. So it's suitable for doing things like IoT applications. So not to be outdone with that, that was not the only update from the Microsoft set of family of models that are being supported on the platform. Stability AI also announced that the Stable Diffusion 3.5 Large and Image Ultra and Image Core are now going to be supported on the Azure AI Foundry model itself. And not to be outdone, Cohere also announced re-rank 3.5 to be included within the Azure AI Foundry. And the re-rank 3.5 is the latest iteration in Cohere's series of re-ranking models, which is really designed to reorder search results based upon deep semantic language understanding of user queries and document content. So last time I checked, there was over 1,800 different models in the Azure AI Foundry catalog. So have at it. There's a lot of models that can be used, everything from DeepSeek to 5 models to Azure AI to Stability and Cohere and Meta and a whole bunch of other ones that are out there, including Snowflake.
1858 to be precise, Jamie. And
There you
it's
go.
amazing, right? Just 2 years, we have so many Gen AI models. It's an amazing progress.
So with that, I would say we've covered a lot from a lot of topics from this week, a lot of news announcements or a lot of launches, a lot to go play with, actually, to be honest with you. We showed a couple of things between AI skills, and I showed you some of the deep research capabilities at OpenAI, but certainly a lot to be used with Sonnet. And I'm eager to try out, as I said before, some of the Claude Code capabilities, and maybe I'll do a labs for everybody in the coming week or two.
Yeah, play with them, everyone. And if you need some guidance, do leave us some comments, and we will respond. We are eager to actually hear your feedback and include those features if you want. Somebody suggested that do more demos, so we've been doing a lot more demos. So do leave us feedback. We do listen to it and act on it. Okay, great. Everybody have a good time. Talk next week. Bye, Jimmy.
Yeah, sounds good. See you, Shadab.